And now it's time for us to discuss more of these headlines and simple keywords. Adam joining us via Zoom. Good morning, Adam.
Good morning, Lena. Happy Monday. It is getting way too hot now.
That's exactly what I think most of us thought over the weekend. Ooh, it's summer. Like, there was no, fade in. It was abruptly summer.
Yeah, just summer, big block capital letters,
Heat wave advisories are likely to be issued throughout the week, so brace yourselves.
Certainly embracing staying indoors with the air conditioner on full.
Be careful, I suppose, is a message we want to share with our listeners. And with that, we jump into our keyword news portion of the day. We're going to try to clarify these headlines for our listeners, and this is our first pick of the day.
BIE trip.
So President Yoon is set to kick off a 6-day overseas trip starting today that will take him to France and Vietnam for a state visit. In France, he'll be promoting Busan's bid to host the 2030 World Expo. What can we expect? What's on the agenda?
Yeah, so a very busy schedule again, diplomatically speaking, for President Yoon. He spent the entire day yesterday, in fact, preparing for the trip without any public schedule, so it goes to show how much of an emphasis he's putting on this trip to France, especially to try and promote Busan's bid. He's attending a general assembly of the Bureau International d'Exposition, the international body in charge of overseeing that World Expo. He'll deliver a speech in English on Tuesday, the first day of the two-day assembly, and the presidential office said Yoon will appear as the last speaker. Now, this marks the fourth round of presentations ahead of the final selection, which will be done by secret ballots in November. So not that much time left until a final decision is made on the host city. Other speakers from the South Korean side will include rapper and singer Psy, as well as startup leaders, as well as people from academia. Karina, the leader of the K-pop group aespa, and soprano Chosumi will also be making appearances, albeit through video, in support of the bid. On Wednesday, Yoon will attend an official World Expo reception that's going to be hosted by Korea to rally support from foreign dignitaries. Also competing for the 2030 World Expo bid are Saudi Arabia's Riyadh, in which the Crown Prince bin Salman will be attending as well. Ukraine's Odessa and Italy's Rome are also competing. Yoon will also hold a summit with French President Emmanuel Macron and attend a series of meetings with Korean residents in France. Meanwhile, President Yoon repeatedly checked bilateral issues also yesterday in preparation for his state visit to Vietnam that starts on Thursday. Now, Vietnam is a key partner country within the ASEAN bloc, and a key mineral supply chain cooperation and local investment by Korean companies are considered the main agendas of this visit. An official from the presidential office said that more than 80% of the economic delegations, a delegation that is accompanying him, are small and medium-sized companies, which is apparently the highest ratio ever. So it just goes to see how much economic cooperation is going to be the focus of the trip to Vietnam.
All right, with that, we move on to our second keyword of the day.
Info disclosure.
So the government and the People Power Party have agreed to push for a special bill that would disclose the identity of people accused of serious crimes. This comes amid heightened public concern over a series of heinous crimes, these random acts of malicious attacks, right?
Right. So, yeah, certainly has been getting a lot of public attention, especially this roundhouse kick case that happened recently, as well as one of the reasons why this bill is being pushed. This special bill will call for disclosing the identity of people accused of committing major crimes such as drug offenses, as well as organized crime, terrorism. Now, in particular, it would call for disclosing the identities of people suspected of random attacks, especially against women. The bill will demand the recently taken mugshots be used when disclosing the suspect's identity to the public, taken within the last 30 days to be precise. Now, the move aims to address criticism that many of the photos currently provided are often unrecognizable, hence why this is going to be one of the areas in which the government and ruling party are trying to address. Now, under the existing law, the identity of the perpetrator can be disclosed only before an indictment. Once the case goes to trial, the identity of the suspect must remain undisclosed. Now, even if the identity of an offender is made public on the sex offender registry, for example, after a conviction, there are restrictions to the use of the information, with people forbidden from sharing or posting online photos of the offender. Now, the issue, of course, has recently become a hot topic, largely due to, as I mentioned, the so-called Busan roundhouse kick case. And it also comes after Chung Yu-jung, a 23-year-old woman accused of murdering a complete stranger, covered her entire face when in public, even after her identity was disclosed. So the name of the game here is basically naming and shaming, and that's what the government and ruling party are trying to push for.
And ensuring that everyone in the public has access to the latest information, what they look like and where they would be about, even after they're released from their prison sentence, right? Or maybe we're jumping ahead of the gun, but that's what we want to look into too, right? When and if they rejoin society, can the public be aware of exactly where they are, right?
Right.
All right, let's also take a look at this other issue. The government and PPP have also agreed to work on lowering the public's fear over Japan's planned discharge of treated radioactive water from its Fukushima nuclear power plant. It must also be said that the fisheries industry might be further hit by the release of the wastewater.
Yeah, so certainly another area that's of public concern at the moment, and a very contentious and controversial one at that. Now, they've agreed to expand the inspection of radioactivity levels in the ocean. They agreed to more than double the number of test sites, for example, from the current 92 to 200. Also, the concentration levels of cesium and tritium, radio isotope of hydrogen, will be tested every other week, compared with the current frequency of once every 1 to 3 months. Now, both sides also pledged their support for the marine product industry, which has been adversely affected by the reduced consumption of seafood out of concerns of possible radioactivity. Now, they agreed to establish a system for testing every single marine product at all 43 major consignment sales. Now, the PPP especially warned against fake news as well that is hurting the fisheries industry and related businesses, including sushi restaurants, for example. Of course, there's been a lot of news and fake news regarding such issues, that there's a high level of radioactivity, for example, in the ocean because of this planned discharge. And of course, that will hinder consumer sentiment in regards to this fisheries product and industry. So, of course, a lot of repercussions from this case and issue. So that's what the government is trying to do. They're trying to alleviate those concerns.
I can't remember the last time we highlight this point, but media literacy has never been ever so important. It is hyper politicized, I must say, with the two sides of the political aisle wanting completely different narratives. But the point is, scientific data is what we're trying to rely on, right? And the spreading of fake news absolutely does not help. Tune in to Good Morning Seoul every day. We'll debunk some of them. All right, let's turn our attention to our third keyword of the day.
Economic policy.
So starting in the second half of the year, the focus of economic policy will gradually shift from price stability to economic response. What exactly does that mean?
Right. So although it is still difficult to kind of lower our guard against inflation, because prices are still quite high at the moment, inflationary pressures, they have eased, with inflation falling to the low 3% range. And it was reported that the finance ministry is preparing the economic policy direction for the second half of the year based on these economic conditions. Now, it is difficult to predict details, as there is still time left until the announcement of the policy direction early next month, but the general direction seems to have been set. Now, one government official said overall there's a sense that we've passed a low point in the economy, and another official noted that there seems to be light at the end of the tunnel. And Finance Minister Chu Kyung-ho told KBS similar comments, and he cited the Korea Development Institute saying that the economy has bottomed out and there are signs of recovery. Regarding inflation, it is expected that the rate of increase in consumer prices will fall to the 2% range during this month and next. And touching on the country's utility fees, Chu noted that although the global price of energy resources has stabilized, it will take years for state-run companies to overcome their deficits. So in terms of electricity prices and gas prices, they are still going to go up, unfortunately, especially in this hot summer when a lot of people will be relying on their air conditioners. It's not really the best of news. She also expressed hopes that local food manufacturers would adjust prices on their products to reflect the latest decline in, say, the global cost of flour, for example. A lot of food prices have been going up. So he's basically saying there are hopes that those food prices may go down. But there are some concerns and skepticism, however. Some watchers point out that Korea doesn't really have the tools to respond to economic difficulties just yet. Typically, monetary, financial, or fiscal policies are used to stimulate the economy. Now, since the benchmark interest rate is the monetary policy domain of the BOK, and the global interest rate hike cycle led by the US Fed is kind of far from over at the moment. The idea of a rate cut is kind of unrealistic, according to a lot of experts. That means more burden on the economy, of course. Higher rates mean more chances of a recession. Now, finances are also tight as well. National tax revenue from January to April of this year was 134 trillion won. That's down about 34 trillion won from the same period last year. Even if the same level of tax revenue comes in from May to the end of this year as last year, it is 38.5 trillion won short of this year's revenue budget as well. So basically, not as much money as the government hopes it has in the coffers, but there are some concerns still when it comes to trying to alleviate any concerns of economic recession at the moment. But of course, we'll have to wait and see. We'll have to check all the economic data in detail in the latter half of the year.
All right, with that, we move on to our fourth keyword of the day.
IRA gray areas.
So the Korean government is seeking more clarification on the U.S. Inflation Reduction Act, as it seems there are still many gray areas to address. So what's the latest on that front?
Right. The Korean government has asked the US to clearly define Chinese companies that must not procure key minerals for electric vehicle batteries due to subsidy requirements under the IRA. Now, Seoul has reportedly submitted official comments on the proposed IRA electric vehicle tax credit guidance regulations that were released by the US Treasury Department on March 31st. Now, in a statement published in the US Official Gazette on the 16th, the government said it is important to consider the unique complexity and global interdependence within the battery supply chain, from core mineral mining to cell manufacturing. This is in response to the regulation that from 2025, key minerals procured from what the US have labeled foreign countries of concern must not be used in electric vehicle batteries in order to receive subsidies in the form of tax credits. Now, the IRA relied on a provision in the Infrastructure Act that defines a foreign concern as a company owned, controlled, or under the jurisdiction of the governments of China, Russia, North Korea, or Iran, a definition that could include virtually any Chinese company. So that's what the Korean government wants clarification on. And the electric vehicle industry itself is concerned that it will be very difficult to completely exclude Chinese sources of key minerals, given the sheer size of China's supply. Now, the Treasury Department did not define a foreign concern when it released the proposed rule on March 31st, saying it would do so in the future. And the government's request is not to exclude, apparently, certain companies, but to clarify which companies in China are included in the list of this foreign concern list. Now, in its comments, Seoul requested that the IRA add more key mineral exporting countries as well to the list of countries with which it has an FTA in order to provide subsidies for use of key minerals mined and processed in the US or in countries that have an FTA with the US as well. So they're trying to get some middle ground between Korea and the US when it comes to the IRA concerns. And the government here said that the current supply capacity of critical minerals in the 21 countries that have entered into FTAs with the US is insufficient to meet all of the requirements of the IRA. So again, it's still an area of concern, and the Korean government and companies alike are trying to, try and get some concessions out of Washington.
And sorry to rush you, but we do have to get to our fifth and
Yes.
final keyword of the day.
Workers' Party meeting.
North Korea has held a plenary meeting of the Workers' Party to discuss issues related to the economy, diplomacy, and defense. So what's the latest on that front?
Yeah, so state media said the party met to decide their country's diplomatic and defense strategy amid what it called a changed international situation. It said the meeting reviewed economic activity for the first half of the year, and it didn't really give any details on what was discussed. And the state media said it will be held over multiple days, so we'll probably get more details as over the following days. But one thing that it did mention was that it called its failed attempt to launch a military satellite failed launch as the most serious shortcoming in the first half of the year, and they pledged to launch another one as soon as possible.
Thank you very much, Adam, for today's coverage. I'll see you tomorrow.
You're very welcome. See you tomorrow.
If you're listening to our program using the podcast service, just a reminder that we do go live Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. Korea Standard Time. So tune in and help us make the show more informative by giving us your input. See you bright and early on Good Morning Seoul.